Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of 914 Wired. This is a community affairs video podcast where we talk about politics, education, and culture, all sorts of things that are impacting people, primarily in Westchester. But we talk about the whole shooting match on here. So my partner in this endeavor is Ardina Seward, and I should also mention Peter Moses, who is not here today because we're recording this on a Jewish holiday. At least it's a Jewish holiday in the evening, and Peter is preparing a meal for an extended family. So our guest is a very special guest today, was City Council member from New Rochelle, Shane Osinloye.
Yes.
Welcome, Shane. Now, we've spoken a bunch of times, and I know you from the New Rochelle scene. We appreciate you coming on here to, kind of chop it up with us a little bit. I want to begin by talking about what's happening because today it's not only is it a Jewish holiday, but it's also a global holiday called Earth Day.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Tell us about Earth Day, what Earth Day means here in West. There's a lot of events going on.
Well, the wonderful thing about our population here in Westchester and especially in New Rochelle, we have such a strong contingent of people that care very much about the environment, very deeply about it. Um, so we have Earth Day celebrations happening all over the county. And New Rochelle, we had a feature one in Anderson Plaza on Saturday, um, from maybe 10 in the morning to about 4 p.m. in the afternoon. But
Anderson Plaza. Hold on a second,
yeah,
Shane. So I know New Rochelle fairly well. Is Anderson Plaza where the Anderson bookstore used to
it is
be?
where,
What's Anderson
well,
Plaza?
most people know where Town Pizza is. It's over by New Rock. So the block from Town Pizza leading up to Applebee's, if you know New Rock that well.
Okay,
If you don't know
gotcha.
it,
It's so
go check it out.
It's out like LeCount Place,
Yes, LeCount.
right?
It's right off of
Okay.
LeCount Place, between LeCount Place and North Avenue.
Yep.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Now I know what you're talking about
yeah.
now. Nice. So Earth Day is bumping along in the city of New Rochelle.
Yes. And
And
it's
is your is
celebratory. A lot of communities actually come out that day and do community cleanups.
yeah.
It's also a good way to do some maintenance and do some, you know, uh, assessment of what your needs are in your community. So it's very highly encouraged. If you have anything going on in your community today, like picking up trash or something, it's not as painful or arduous as you might think it is. So definitely, please go do it wherever you happen to be
There's a real
in
need
the
for
show.
it. No, there's a real need for it. I was looking at some apartments this weekend, and I was at a building, beautiful building, not in New Rochelle, and the surrounding perimeter area of it is like there's garbage all over the street. It's a scourge. It's like apart from the broader global implications of conservation, it's a terribly unsightly thing too,
Right.
right? When you're like walking along the street and there's coffee cups and newspaper and garbage strewn about. Now it's a Sunday, maybe it got cleaned up on Friday and it just accumulated over the weekend, but it's a real thing, and I think it also has a psychological effect. It's like that broken window concept. It's like when one little thing goes wrong, other things tend to get worse as well.
Right. Well, I can't speak for other communities, of course.
Yeah,
But from New
right.
Rochelle, there were a few streets, and including the train station, where people had concerns about seeing an increase in trash. Um, it's something that, I mean, that's basically what the role of the city council is, to take the concerns that people bring to us and bring it down through city management for it to be taken care of.
And why
Um,
is that, Sean? Why is that? Does that have to do with manpower, with the Department of
no, so
Sanitation? Does it have to do with people in general who are not
we
being responsible?
it's just literally a very it's a part of the process of things. So actually, alternate side of the street parking in New Rochelle was is not suspended at the moment. So there's usually an uptick in uh, a downtick in the ability to do street cleaning with the street sweepers because alternate side of the street parking is not in effect.
Ah,
So when you see like little things like that, it's not like, oh, the town's, I mean, we've been accused of all sorts of things lately. The town's being destroyed or buildings are coming down, God knows. But it's really just like alternate side of the street parking is not in effect right now.
So what I'm hearing
Drugs
is
to it.
you're on the city council for 4 months and you're hearing every problem that's gone wrong for decades,
Yes,
right?
within the 4 months, and it's all our fault. And it's
Yeah.
funny to that point. I know what we know what we've done. I know what I've done. So it just makes it humorous if people weren't so belligerent about it. It
Yeah.
would.
Well, I think you have to have a sense of humor to be on the city council any place because you're going to hear it, and I think that that's the hard part is that you kind of, if you allow it to, it can be unhealthy because you can sort of internalize the problems, and I think what you said a second ago is very interesting, Shane, which is these problems were here before you got here, or you said something to that effect, and you kind of you can if you can hang on to that, I think you can be on the city council for a very long time. You do
Thank you.
need to maintain a sense
but
of
do you
I
humor.
think
mean,
people?
So I have one question: why are you wearing a tie dye shirt? Is that related to Earth
this
Day?
no, this is from. Oh my God, I forgot that, and I was trying to look for the name of the organization before I got on. This is from a social services organization. I'm gonna get it to you, and the next time I'm on here, I'm gonna bring their names up because I wanted to name
Well,
drop it.
after the show, email it to me, and I'll put the name of the organization into the show
So
notes.
they were offering these at the Nourishell Street Fair last September, and they are
Hmm.
also giving out kits for people that I forgot what the kits are called, but for people that
Hmm.
are having like an overdose, where you could save them in the moment from those kits.
I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. It's called Narcan.
Yes, they were giving out Narcan
Yes.
kits and they were selling T-shirts. I don't know if it was to fundraise for their organization or not, but tie-dye T-shirts, social cause, you have a sale with me. So that's why I'm wearing.
Okay, very
Also, it's a
interesting. There's a
beautiful day
big push
outside.
on to distribute Narcan around New York State. There's a New York State agency, OASAS. You go to that website, I'll put it in the show notes, and you can actually order 2 doses of Narcan. I mean, I hope I never need it,
Right.
but I ordered one. And it showed up in the mail about 6 weeks later. And the state is trying to make sure that there's Narcan available all over the place because it's just very sad. I don't know that much about it, but this fentanyl crisis is real. And sadly, if something like that happens, you can save a
Right.
life. So anyway, that's a kind of a sidebar. It's a nasally delivered counter drug medicine. That's what
I
that is.
just texted the young lady that works there. Like, what's the name of your organization again? I give up.
Yeah.
Always call her.
No, you can't remember. You can't remember everything,
Yeah.
Shane. I'm trying to remember how to pronounce your last name, Osinloye. So that's new to me because, in full disclosure here, I am acquainted with the Osinloye family because I went to high school with Shane's aunt, and I gather that the family somewhere along the way became connected to Nigerian roots
Yes.
and determined that the correct pronunciation is
So
Osinloye.
it's Osinloye. Osinloye. And my Nigerian family cleared that up for us. So we were saying Osinloye for the first 10 years of my life until my uncle's wedding and my Nigerian family came and they said, how are you pronouncing our last name again? So we cleaned it up
Okay.
after. I mean,
And
but
then when
we
you
take it phonetically, as long as you get some variation. Some people annihilate the name. So if you say it phonetically,
yeah,
we're okay.
I gather I'm one of them. I'm
No,
one
no,
of them.
no, no,
So
not even, not even
did
close.
you when you ran for office? Was it hard to It's not an American name. It's not Johnson. It's not Smith. Was it hard running for office?
No, I have a spectacular district. I've been meaning to say this for a while. I'm very particularly
Please.
proud of my district and my city because I'm not the first black male city councilman in my district. And this is not the historically black district before. I mean, the last guy was a Republican. It is what it is. But the fact that I'm not the first black guy means I do actually have a district that celebrates diversity, that doesn't buck against having black male leadership, You know what I mean? Like I have people that aren't going to be there's not going to be a vitriol against me in my, in my living space. So I'm very comfortable.
So this is interesting to me. So let provide a little context
Sure.
around this. New Rochelle has what are called councilmanic districts.
Yeah.
5 districts, correct?
6 plus Adam Mayor.
6 districts.
Yes.
And then the mayor is elected at large.
Yes.
And so what you're telling me now, my recollection here, rolling the clock back to approximately 1991, there was a lawsuit that brought us these councilmanic districts in New Rochelle, whereas prior to that time there were 5 city council members who were all elected at large.
I think it was 4.
So you're telling me that the district that you reside in was not the district that sort of had a preponderance of non-white people. Is that a correct statement?
That's not exactly how I would describe it. I would describe it as there were specific spaces in New Rochelle that where black homeowners had very established neighborhoods. This
Right.
was not one of them. The
Okay.
diversity in my district was not intentional. It wasn't. It was. I wouldn't say it was happenstance because we've had some
Right.
serious crises in New Rochelle with urban renewal and things like that. But it, you
Yeah.
know, it shows that in the heart of the city, because we have the train station, we have the literal circulatory system of the city,
Sure.
and where
Sure.
people naturally landed, it's actually perfectly diverse. It's 30% black, 30% white, 30% Hispanic, and 7% Asian, 7 point something
Yeah.
percent Asian. Yes.
Shane, tell us what you think the top 2 or 3 big issues are in New Rochelle. And I won't bog you down with the distractions, of the mayor and you're not the mayor yet. You don't have to quite
Yeah,
worry
don't
about
say
the
yet.
exact same issues.
Don't say yet.
For
I like
Shane
our mayor.
Osinloye, what are the top 2 or 3 issues?
I think some of the top. Well, number one for me is shoring up the things that have been lost or by the wayside. We've only actually had one council person that's lived south of Main Street for a very long time now. So there's some issues. Like I told you, there's some things that I've already been able to clean up and pull through that I'm very proud of. The ability to have, initiated them early. With our buildings department, we actually uh, are making an effort to have a complex take their trash off of the street by having them house their trash on their property as opposed to on the public street, which is also across from a strip mall. And it's also where,
Hmm.
our children are going to school, walking to school to Trinity and Isaac Young. I'm down in Davenport right now, and one of the adjacent complexes uh, basically would line the street with garbage, and it would be there. And there was a rat and mouse. I didn't know you could have both infestations at one time of rats and mice. There was a rat and mouse problem. And you have our kids walking past garbage, and it's not something new. It was actually that way. I'm 38 years old now, as of last month. So ignore my birthday party. That was a week ago. I was just too busy. But when I was 14, 15, 16, you know, in this neighborhood, actually, I moved to Franklin Avenue when I was about 10 years old. So ever since, we'd been walking to school next to garbage for that entire time. 1 year at Trinity and my entire tenure at Isaac. And when these things are happening, you think of them as normal because it's the way it is. You think it has to be
Hmm.
that way for some reason because that's the way it is. That is not the case. So we were able to push that through. And that basically number one on my list for everything is just shoring up what we should have been doing all along. And that's, what I will say is, this is why you need diversity, not just in racial diversity, not just in gender diversity. Age diversity is important. Geographic diversity is important. There are a lot of different types of representation that we're trying to shore up right now, and that's
So let me ask about a follow up on
sure.
that. So you mentioned a minute ago that there is not geographic diversity on the council right
There
now.
is now. You're welcome.
So out of the five members, not is it five plus the mayor or five including the mayor?
Six plus the mayor. So there's six
Six
count.
plus
Yeah,
the
there's
mayor.
six.
So out of the
Council.
six council members, those are all coming from councilmanic districts. But you have to reside in your district in order to
Yeah,
run?
you have to reside in your district to be a council
Okay.
person. Yeah.
Okay. So then there has to be geographic diversity by definition,
No,
no?
if your district is cut very interestingly, then you could completely avoid entire communities and entire sections of the city. And then also,
Okay.
if your district is covering, like I have a diagonal basically through New Rochelle. So if your district
Mm-hmm.
is covering like a wide swath, where you live in that swath is completely random and happenstance. So no, you could easily avoid, geographic diversity just through that. Um, the
Speaking,
Lexington, I'm sorry,
no,
side
go,
note,
go, go, no, go.
parentheses, the Lexington Center for Recovery is where I got this shirt. So shout out to them and their
Excellent.
amazing tie-dye shirt with this giant hawk on it.
Yep. Send me a
It
URL or some contact info, and I'll put it in the
for
put it in
sure.
the show notes.
And
Ardina.
speaking of diversity, what has been done or is being done to help the folks over on Winthrop Avenue in the housing projects there?
So, I'll combine answers. This is another one of my priorities, housing. So you know, we're gonna look at as many, not just for that section, not to be myopic and direct to that, because that's actually not in my council district. That
Ah,
is in
okay,
District 3 where David Peters is the council person.
okay.
But overall, we all communicate, and I would say that we are trying to become much more innovative when we approach any topic. When it comes to housing, when it comes, back to Earth Day, when it comes to the environment, when we talk about communications, there are a lot of things that we need to be much more intentional and assertive and innovative surrounding. There are a lot of interesting things happening in this country right now that I think we would love to see in New Rochelle. One of my biggest priorities is home ownership.
Mm.
So the and of course there's the discussion of affordable housing. My mission is for people to afford the housing, so that goes to the economics of how we are creating living wages in New Rochelle as well. Those are not disparate topics. So I would say that that's a very close number two, besides the maintenance that we need to do right now. So for
But
the
it's one.
So
drop,
those are topics we talk a lot about on this show. We have done a bunch of shows on housing and affordable
right?
housing. We had 3 consecutive shows about affordable housing in Mamaroneck fairly recently, and it's a hot topic that people want to talk about. And New Rochelle comes up all the
For
time.
sure, and particularly
There's
for the
5 to 6 thousand apartments over there, and
right,
I don't know how many opportunities there are for middle class people to afford to purchase
right.
something.
It's one thing to be able to afford the houses, but it's another thing to be able to afford the taxes in New Rochelle.
Right.
Because when you're talking about the increased need for services as the population in New Rochelle starts to expand rapidly, you're going to have to make sure that the infrastructure gets tuned up so you don't have a lot of floods and you have proper sewage, which is going to cost money, the school system. So, is there anything? I mean, it sounds like a dumb question, but is there anything being done to mitigate the coming storm of homeowners having to pay more taxes and hence people not being able to afford those houses?
So, I mean, um, the affordability is not one sided in people's abilities to afford the housing. Having subsidized home ownership and home ownership programs is also, pulling from the other end as well. But regarding the taxes, here's number four on the list. You asked me for a top three, so here's number four. Number four on the list is helping people understand, well, what exact part of our local government infrastructure is actually responsible for the bulk of what you're paying in taxes, the bulk of your maintenance, things like that, because the vast majority of your taxes, I won't give you an exact percentage right now, but the vast majority of your taxes is actually driven by the school district.
Yeah.
Schools. There you
Yeah.
go.
That's not us.
Right.
We're your cleanup crew. Just
Bingo.
Yeah.
right. You
That's right.
know, um, so there, just understanding that with us understanding that, we're also looking to shore up our relationship with our school district and our school board. We know many of the members already. We actually have a council person that was just recently on the school board. So we're deepening our relationship and our communications with each other to see what the possibilities are there. um, with that said, yeah, just helping people understand. Yeah, so you want to talk about the other 80% of your taxes? That's another podcast.
So with
you
that
know,
being, with
So
that
I'm
being
sorry,
being
but there's
said, do you? I'm sorry.
just
Go
one
ahead.
more part.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Just one of the things that I've been concerned about, and there are a lot of buzzwords like transit oriented development,
Mm,
like 15-minute cities, all of these buzzwords for that are competitive on just your outlook as far as how you're developing a city overall. Regardless of all that, my mission is to make sure that the wages that are created for New Rochelians are created here.
yeah.
Any help that we can have with that is vital. So please, Charlie, like you said earlier, I'm not going to know everything. The only one thing that I need to know is that I perpetually need to ask
Mm,
who does know.
mm.
I'm going to
mhm.
forget. I ask the person that will remember. You know what I mean? For Earth Day, that becomes important just to rope that back in, because there is a megaton of money that the federal government has approved over the last few years that has to do with capital project reinvestment, that has to do with creating green jobs, that has to do with training, that has to do with implementing different types of engineering, not just like, paying the engineer, but actually developing the new technologies that we'll need to address the
Right.
climate crisis. You know, knowing all of that
So
on the table.
what I'm hearing in your remarks is that you need a relationship with your federal and state
Oh, is
partners.
that segue? Yes.
That which is a thank you. Shane, you could do the show.
That's
It could
segue.
be your,
That's perfect segue.
914
Nice
Shane.
move, Shane. Nice move.
Yeah. So you're in the arena. You sort of have an acute awareness of these pressing topics of the priorities, and certainly it takes dollars to get these things
For sure.
done, and those kinds of dollars don't grow on trees, but the federal government has a money tree,
Right.
and
Your money
you
tree.
need a relationship. You're in the arena. You're active in. I assume you've been active in local politics longer than your time on the city council,
For sure.
and so you kind of know where people's. You understand the zeitgeist, and I think you've been somewhat active on the Bowman campaign. In this recent round against George Latimer, I'd like to hear where you think things are and like what is the meaning of this race, not just the under over, but like what's the story? What's going on?
Well, I've been supportive of the Bowman campaign. I'm one of the elected officials that endorsed him early on. I'm not actually like officially on the campaign anymore.
Mm,
I was with them during the period for petitioning, just to make sure they got on the ballot. But I have a lot to do on city council, and I also
Hmm.
have other roles that I need to be responsible to. So, but just and just to be clear, because this gets very much lost. I actually I almost said am. I actually was a George Latimer supporter as well. That's important. Like, we need to like sit on that for a while. That a lot of people that have been forced to pick sides at this moment were actually supportive of both of these people. This is not a necessary primary. This is not, there was no empty suit involved.
mm,
Bowman has bought money to every part of this district, including New Rochelle, including $12 million to do the link project that we're trying to do in the center of the city. That's going to be a transportation project, a community third space creation of a project that's going to be, an economic investment, because I and the other council person that oversee that are going to make sure that we have, a strong investment into the business community and the entrepreneurship community here. So there was no lame duck in either one of these spaces, and to say, who I'm supporting or not, the the fact that I was supporting George Latimer, that's exactly why him challenging Jamaal is a betrayal.
And well, okay, this is, of course, we're getting to this at the end of the show, where I wish we had started this at the beginning of the show. But
it's okay. We can extend for a couple of minutes because we took a break there in the middle.
What is Latimer's relationship to New Rochelle, and frankly, what has he done for New Rochelle?
I can't think of, for the latter question, I can't think of anything off of the top of my mind. But also that's another point. If you want to look for a distinction in the two candidates,
Right.
anything Jamaal Bowman has done, he was a principal before this. So anything he's done is him doing it. It's him in his office. Anything he was able to do, and every office has shortcomings. There's never been any such thing as a perfect politician.
Right.
But anything he does is him. Anything George Latimer does is George Latimer plus the entire county legislative board. So it's not just George Latimer doing these things. It's George Latimer, the entire board of our county legislators, every mayor, and every establishment throughout Westchester. He doesn't operate in a bubble. That's the difference between the role of a county executive and a congressperson. A congressperson is an isolated thing. A congressperson operates solely with their office. A county executive works with the county legislative board on top of that, and the county.
Doesn't a member of Congress operate in the context of the other 434 members?
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely,
understand.
for sure, and that
Yeah.
that actually even emphasizes the point, because those other 434 members out of the 435, they have nothing to do with our district, and they don't care hide nor hair. The vast majority don't care hide nor hair what happens here. So that's even more to the point of being able to pull those resources down from the federal government and negotiate those things as a congressman. What we're
Right.
That's very different than having a triple layer of Westchester supporting, whatever initiative you happen to greenlight. So
But then,
if you
is it fair?
want
Is
to
it fair? Is it fair then to judge Latimer equally with Bowman, even though they're in two different roles? In other words, if Latimer were to become the congressperson for District 16, would he not be able to give equal emphasis on New Rochelle as Bowman has done? Or is
Well,
that being too presumptuous?
we don't know, because I can't think of a scenario where he's operated in isolation in that way. We don't know.
Shane,
Completely
Shane,
untested.
let me
Untested.
try to understand a little bit about this. So we have an incumbent. He's running for his third term in Congress.
Yes.
The incumbency rate in Congress is north of 90%. And yet this is considered to be an extremely contentious race without anybody predicting over, under, what's going to happen. There's a race going on here. This is a definite horse race. And I'm wondering if you can share from your perspective. You're still a young guy, and you've articulated an affinity for some of the positions that Jamaal Bowman ascribes to. Like, let me state the question a different way. Win, lose, or draw, whatever Bowman has to offer isn't going away. There's something there. I sense that there's an interest on the part of younger voters. There's an interest on the part of left-leaning and progressive people. There's an interest in something he's doing, or he wouldn't be there in the first place.
Of course.
And win, lose, or draw, that that
No, that's not
orientation, for
true.
lack of a
Because
better
if
term,
Bowman,
is not
if,
going away.
if Congressman Bowman is not my congressman, then I don't have a black male anywhere upstream in government representing me. So no, absolutely not. I definitely won't have an entire perspective going into Congress and representing me. I will be my only black male elected leader at this moment if Ken Jenkins doesn't run for county legislator, which he probably will.
Hmm.
But
Right.
besides that, operating with the understanding,
Well,
if
the mayor in New Rochelle is
it is
black.
she's black, she's not a black male. It's a very unique
Okay, okay,
But
okay, okay.
everybody
Point
has
taken.
why is
Okay.
race even a consideration? And I mean, does it
race
make
is a
this?
consideration. We live in America. I'm not going to pretend or it's not when we've had 400 years of a scenario that with race-based politics, when we've had decades of riots. There was a woman that I knocked on her door and she said, "Oh well, Jamaal Bowman brought up the reparations thing, and
Right.
I think we just need to forget about slavery." I said I could go back every single decade, never mention slavery once, and still justify reparations. I could go
But
back to the 2008 financial crisis. We're not in a scenario, and this is the problem with Westchester, and this is why a leader like Bowman is so important. We can't pretend, and young people are no longer going to pretend that things like race, things like gender, things like age are not factors in representation because they've played themselves out
Right.
that way, regardless of how many people that don't represent you in any kind of a way say that they don't really matter. We have
is that
Clearly,
not painting the whole
yeah.
picture rather homogenous? Because then what it means, or what it appears to mean, is that Bowman being a black person would have certain sensitivities, certain means of legislating, which would benefit the black community. Uh, but why could that not be ascribed also, for argument's sake, to a white person who may have equal sensitivities? Or is that being naive?
Can I insert
I
something
don't
real
want to
quick? But
call
while
it.
you think about that,
Yeah, sure.
Shane, hang on one second. Ardina, what I think I'm hearing in Shane's remarks is that before you get to the nit and the grit of the specific details of the appropriations and the votes and all that, people feel seen by Jamaal Bowman,
Okay, yeah, I'll give you that. Sure.
When I knock
and
on
I
doors,
think that's a
Yeah.
thing.
I have
Yeah.
knocked on doors and had young men like, "Oh wow, you're our councilman! Like that's so cool!" Da, da, da. I'm like, "Wait till you meet your congressman." It's a very different thing. And honestly, that
Right.
access, if I could describe one of a multitude, and again, this is just one topic where you gave a particular scenario of, oh, well, one or the other, we're still basically going to get the same thing. This is only one thing in a list of things that I have where it's like, no, I actually will lose a very specific type of representation because of this challenge. The relationships between our communities, the relationship between the black community and government, and understanding what your relationship is supposed to be, understanding the funding resources that government could provide from the local, county, state, and federal levels, including the regions that the states identify. Having that type of feedback, having that type of inside access, being communicated to our communities, helping our nonprofit and NGO organization leaders understand, hey, these are your funding sources coming up for those things that you care about and that I care about
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
This is the opportunity for you to present your own candidate for local government. This is your, I could keep on going through the list of the things that we will lose in communication by having somebody that doesn't directly represent us. And skin folk aren't always kinfolk either. So him just being black, no, listen, if we're gonna talk for real, we're gonna talk for real. Kinfolk doesn't mean kinfolk. So Charlie, what that means is just because somebody is a black representative doesn't
Right.
I know
necessarily
what it
mean
means.
that they're going to represent the black community. And I
Right.
think that throughout Westchester, if you want to talk about the narrative of what's happening, I think that's why people have been so supportive of Congressman Bowman, because even though he is a congressman, which is all the way up in the level, he still will come to the hood and speak to the kids that are running programs there. He'll still go to that graduation ceremony. He'll still go to that young adults thing. He'll go to that before he goes to the dinner.
Well, to his credit, I
You
mean,
know?
you got to hand it to him.
Right.
Jamaal Bowman grew up in the PJs. That's for people who don't
Right,
know what the PJs are. That's slang for the housing projects. So
right,
he's the real deal.
Familiar with it.
Bowman comes from the source, raised by a single mother, and so he can speak. He's authentic. People
right.
may like him, people may dislike him. He's authentic, and he
And
can speak to the poverty in black neighborhoods.
Right.
that's what people, I think, are connecting with. That I'd like your comment on this, Shane, because I was looking at they got a website called Clerk of the United States House of Representatives, where you can see exactly how everybody votes on everything from the present all the way back to 1789. And last week, when they had those four sort of I don't know what they call them, but like four separate bills that got sent to the Senate as one. And this is, I'd like your comment on this. So not surprisingly, Representative Bowman voted for the Ukraine appropriation.
Mm-hmm.
He voted against the Israel appropriation.
Mm-hmm.
He voted for the Taiwan Indochina appropriation, and he voted against the law that would require TikTok disassociate itself from the Chinese government.
Mm-hmm.
So they, the Congress decided to make these four separate votes so that people could pick and choose. But the problem that I think that this presents politically for Jamaal Bowman is for all of the things that he has to offer on those no votes, he's voting with MAGA Republicans.
Oh,
He's voting with Marjorie Taylor
hold
Greene.
on.
He's
Before
voting
we
with
take
Paul
it in that
Kosar.
direction, understand that there are a multitude of bills that I could go through for the last 40 years, 50 years, where the hyper
Yeah.
conservatives like the Freedom Caucus and the fiscal conservatives and things like that have voted in alignment with Democrats for completely separate reasons to vote for those things. In a vote, you get a yes or no. You don't get a vote and then, like in the Supreme Court, you get a vote and then you could give the notes of exactly why you took that vote. Like that's not the scenario that we play. So to make that alignment, I mean, I don't think establishment Democrats want to do that with a millennial to try to say, Jamaal Bowman's in alignment with like MAGA Republicans. Let's not. I could talk about who's funding the races right now in Westchester and make an alignment in the other direction for who's working in alignment with MAGA Republicans.
Well, it's the
Right.
argument about APAC, which leads me to the next question: is what do you
Right.
tell Jewish residents in your council district as to your support of Bowman?
Which ones?
Well, that's a good. That's exactly which ones, because
That's a good
that's a
answer.
good answer.
Yeah.
Because they're progressive Jewish voters who are solid smackdown for Bowman, and there are other Jewish voters who Bowman is their worst nightmare because of his relationship, not his relationship to Israel, but because of his remarks about Israel and support of Israel.
I
So
think to try to wrap things in the space of time that we have usually for these podcasts and things, we try to like pull together and create these. I don't want to say generalizations because that would be a generalization in and of itself. The nuance of this is throughout even my short tenure helping with the petitioning, being an elected official myself and dealing with, interacting with various communities and dealing with different issues right here in New Rochelle, I've found every single type of voter in different communities.
right.
So I've found conservative Jewish voters who don't support Jamaal. I've found Zionist Jewish supporters of Jamaal who say, I don't like what he's doing, you know, as far as the votes that he's taken in Congress regarding this issue, but I'm not a single issue voter.
Mm,
And I like him for so many other reasons. There's the progressive Jewish voter who is like, well, you know, he's in perfect alignment with all of my politics.
right.
You know, I found every different scenario to try to wrap it in a neat bubble. And um, one of the things that I've seen is it was shocking to me even to have that, oh, yeah, no, I'm a Zionist,
Mm,
self described Zionists who are like, yeah, but I don't want to, I like having these are white men and white women, older, so they're not younger
Hmm.
Jewish voters either.
Right.
Oh,
They're traditional liberal
I like
Democrats.
having traditional liberal Democrat. It's just a person that has an issue and feels a certain way
Yeah.
about an issue, but still likes Jamal. They didn't wake up in the morning and certify like the Twitter check. Oh, I'm a traditional liberal Jewish. Like no one does
Right.
that. They feel the way they
I
feel
like
about
I like your
it.
message. I like your
yes.
message, and what the way you're coming at this is you've said it in 3 words, Shane, which I'm gonna remember. We're going to talk about it the next time you come on the show. No neat
Yep.
bubble.
There's no neat bubble.
Very well thought out.
And that's why, and I think that's what makes this particular campaign so difficult to predict because there is no neat bubble. There's a lot of different vectors and angles, and I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody that quite knows exactly how this is going to land. Shane Osinloye, thank you for being our guest on 914 Wired. We really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your perspective and your way of thinking about things and sharing a little bit about what's happening in New
You're a
Rochelle
thinking man, Shane.
as
You're a
well.
thinking man.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
So that's going to do it for today. Ardina, that's it for
Yeah, I mean,
today. We're going to
anytime.
wrap up.
Thank you for having me.
And listen, thank you, Shane. And send over those links. We'll put them into the show notes.
Gotcha.
If you're watching on YouTube, definitely click subscribe so that you find out when there's a new episode. If you're listening to the podcast on any of the various platforms, click follow. That way you find out when there's a new episode. That's it for today. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time on
Thank you.
914 Wired.